and welcome to the Mental Health Hotline. If you are obsessive-compulsive, press 1 repeatedly. If you are codependent, ask someone to press 2 for you. If you have multiple personalities, press 3, 4, 5, and 6. If you are paranoid, we know what you are and what you want. Stay on the line and we'll trace your call. If you're delusional, press 7 and your call will be transferred to the mothership. If you are schizophrenic, listen carefully and a small voice will tell you which number to press. If you're depressive, it doesn't matter which number you press, no one will answer you. If you're dyslexic, press 69696969. If you have a nervous disorder, please fidget with the hash key until the beep. After the beep, please wait for the beep. If you have a short-term memory loss, please try your call again later. And if you have low self-esteem, hang up. All our operators are too busy to talk to you.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome to the X Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Crystal Beach, Ontario. Now, if you'd like to send me an email, it is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And if you'd like to find out all about the programming we have available for you on the X-Zone TV channel that is exclusive to Simul TV, visit www.simultv.com. Now, as you know, X-Zone Nation, this is a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And we come to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern, right here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, and Mutual Broadcast Network. X-Zone Nation, my guest this hour is Jennifer Stein, and she is best known for her award-winning 90-minute documentary film about the famous 1975 Travis Walton story. Jennifer has been an activist in the UFO community for about 20 years as a coordinator and founding member of the Main Line MUFON, a community educational service of the Mutual UFO Network in Pennsylvania. Jennifer serves as a state section director for MUFON in Pennsylvania as well. Now, Jennifer has published articles in periodicals about UFO phenomena, precognition, synchronicity, the crop circle phenomena, as well as articles about Travis Walton's story. Joining me now is Jennifer Stein. And Jennifer, always great talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
First of all, congratulations on the awards you've won, and congratulations on getting the story out there and working so hard to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that we are not alone and that the Travis Walton fire in the sky case is real. Tell us how you got involved in that case.
Well, I met Travis at a conference, and I was asked to actually help organize a conference for him, which I did for the 40th anniversary of his event. And in the process of doing that, it occurred to us that we should have some film clips up in the forest with him and the different crew members. And lo and behold, after about 5 years, that manifested into a really interesting documentary film, which, as you know, has now won about 28 mainstream film festival awards around the country.
What makes the Travis Walton case so unique?
Well, Rob, I think it's such a complex case. There's missing time. There's 5 days worth of missing time where Travis himself goes missing. There were 7 witnesses to this UFO encounter, not just one personal, testimony. And it broke in the international media as a possible missing story, a possible homicide, and a UFO story all at once. So it became this overnight media sensation. And because of that, it's been hounded by skeptics and experts and researchers ever since. It's really like it's a hot potato. And literally, that hot potato's been thrown around the world for like 46 years now. And it hasn't stopped. I mean, it's going on right now as well.
How has this story, the ups and downs of the story, the pro-cons of the story, how has this affected Travis Walton as a person?
Well, I'll tell you, Rob, he has really learned to grow a tough skin. He just cannot bother to be affected by the debunkers that are out there that say, oh, this couldn't have happened. In fact, in my documentary, at the very end of it, he makes a really funny statement. He says, I wouldn't wish this experience on anybody except the skeptics who claim this never happened. He said they would be well served by having this experience. So he has just learned to digest it and put it into place. And he also really thinks that what probably most likely happened to him is he was hit accidentally by this beam or thrust or force or bolt of lightning or whatever it is that came out of this craft because he got too close to it. He ran right up underneath it because he wanted to get a really good look at it.
Right.
And he was thrown for like 15 feet by this zap, this bolt of electrostatic charge or lightning or whatever it was. And it probably killed him. And the crew boys who were watching this, all sitting in a truck about 100 feet away, drove away. So he realizes that probably what happened is these beings, whoever they are, picked him up to probably bring him back to life and to take responsibility for what had happened. Because otherwise, Travis would have been dead and these guys would have been, maybe even gone to the electric chair or hung in Arizona at that time in 1975. Had he not come back, right, and he not come back alive, these boys would probably still be incarcerated for his murder.
Now, Jen, what was the date of the Travis Walton abduction?
It was November 5th, 1975, and it lasted till very wee early morning hours of November 11th. So he was gone a full 5 days before he returned and was dropped off on the side of the road outside of Heber, Arizona, when he called his family and asked for help. And it's very interesting that the operator in town knew his voice, knew who he was, because her kids had gone to school with him. And she called the local police because she listened in on the call. She heard his voice. She knew who he was. She listened in, and she called the police and said, he's back. He's back. He's out in a phone booth by Heber. But the police got there after his brother-in-law had already picked him up. So it's such a complex story. It really is.
Jen, I remember having Travis on the show many years ago when I was at 610 CKTB. And I asked Travis if he was aware that on the day that he believes that they were coming back, not the day of the 11th, but on the 10th of November, that was the same day that the Edmund Fitzgerald sank in Lake Superior under suspicious conditions.
Yes. Yes, interesting.
Then, on November the 11th, which is Remembrance Day here in Canada, there were UFO sightings over the Lake Ontario, Lake Erie sightings, and the animals in all zoos within the area where these UFOs were spotted were acting crazy. In fact, animals from Marineland in Niagara Falls bolted out of their cages and their corrals, and were actually had to be surrounded up by the Ontario Provincial Police on the Queen Elizabeth Highway.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
I did not know that, Rob. I know that highway well.
So
I've driven it many times.
So why the skepticism? It's been what? How many years now?
46. It's been 46 years. And there's this whole new renewed skepticism going on. There's this woman in the Australian outbacks, I guess, in Perth, Australia. She's come up with this whole new website called $3 Kit. And she's well-financed, and she's going after attacking any really good UFO case that's got some kind of connection with an ET being. And of course, Travis saw two different species. So this website in Australia is going after they're going after the Betty and Barney Hill story. So they've been in touch with Kathleen Martin.
Right.
And they're going after the Travis Walton case. And honestly, Rob, I think this all relates to the June 26th, announcement by the U.S. government, where they finally kind of came clean and said, yes, we're being visited by extraterrestrial craft. They didn't say extraterrestrial beings. They just said craft. Mm-hmm. And we know that they're here and they outmaneuver our jets, and they often interfere with our military operations. And we don't know who they are. We don't know what they are. And we need more money to study them. That's what the U.S. said June 26th. It was this final statement we'd been waiting for. And since that point, all summer long, it seems like anyone who has a really good ET encounter themselves with direct contact with an extraterrestrial being, as Travis did, then they are going to be heavily debunked. In fact, Luis Elizondo even basically came out and said that. He was the Pentagon informant that stepped out of the Pentagon in December 16th, 2017, and said, look, we've been studying these things and the American public needs to know. Mm-hmm. He has clearly said that the ET contact part of the experience is not going to be part of disclosure. We're only going to hear about the craft. We're not going to be able to talk about beings or contact with beings.
Jennifer, I hate to do this to you, my dear. But being in broadcasting yourself, you know that we have to take commercial breaks, so please stand by. And X Zone Nation, if you'd like to visit Jennifer's website, visit www.mainlinemufon.com, as well as traviswaltonthemovie.com. Jennifer Stein is my guest. This is the X Zone, and we're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Crystal Beach, Ontario, Canada. I'm Rob McConnell. Don't go away.
Love to an alien near Roswell last night. We strolled along together in the pale moonlight. I had a funny feeling that something wasn't right. I made love to an alien last night. When she gripped my hand, I was feeling mighty fine, but her fingers with mine would not intertwine. When I bent down and gazed into her eyes, they were big as donuts and blacker than the sky. Said I'm feeling lonely. I said, Lord, so am I. We'll stroll along together, but we won't question why. That ground beneath your feet, dear, is flashing red and white and sprouting little mushrooms left and right.
Explanation, our guest this hour is Jennifer Stein, and if you'd like to find out more about Jennifer, visit www.mainlinemufon.com, as well as traviswaltonthemovie.com. But later on in this segment, we're going to be talking about a super event that Jennifer and Travis Walton are part of. But I'd just like to get back to the actual case that is at the epicenter of all this, Jen. I understand that there is a bit of problems between Mike Rogers as well as and Travis. Where does this stem from? Is this just media garbage, or is there something behind the story?
Honestly, Rob, from my take on it, and I've been in touch with Mike directly, it's just basically a bunch of malarkey that a new opportunist has kind of stirred up and is trying to make a big deal out of. There's a claim that Travis actually hoaxed this event. And when you speak to Steve Pierce or you speak to John Goulet or Kenny Peterson, even Travis himself, they literally go, right, and how did we hoax this UFO? And there's some malarkey that this was a fire tower. Now, these boys worked in the forest. They well knew what a fire tower looked like. They drove past them all the time. And this new opportunist, I don't even remember his name. I think it's Evan or something like this. He's taken over a couple of blog podcasts, and they're out there saying, oh, what they did is they stopped in front of a fire tower at night and they saw that and they got scared and thought that was a UFO. And that Travis then planned this hoax that somebody put a flashlight down on him, or
Right.
one of those fire tower lights, that they use to signal one another, like a ship signaling light. Somebody hit him with the light and then he jumped backwards. Now, there was a huge thrust that freaked all these other loggers out. And two of these guys had just gotten out of the military, one out of the Army, one out of the Navy. They'd seen action, and they weren't going to be disturbed or, upset by somebody hitting him with a beam of light. They felt this in their bodies. They saw him land without any attempt to break his fall, and it was 15, 20 feet from where he was standing. They wouldn't have slammed the truck and driven away if they knew they were sitting in front of the Gentry Fire Tower, and they would clearly see the frame of the Gentry Fire Tower underneath this thing, and they wouldn't mistake it for a round craft. It's really absurd what's going on. But people who don't know the details of the story are rushing, clamoring to find out about it. It's really amazing to me, and I think there's another reason why this is happening. And it's because when COVID came, right, everybody got locked down in their homes and they could go on the internet, they could Google up their TV, and they could choose more than ever before to figure out what they were going to spend their time watching. And just about that time, around 2019, I got this film out on Amazon Prime. It got picked up by a distributor, and it got put in multiple languages. So it's around the world now, and people are Googling and trying to research about UFOs. Well, don't you know, this film has gone up to the top of the charts finally. I'm finally seeing a little bit of income coming in from Film Hub, which is my distributor. And when I start to see income, that means a lot of people are watching it, because I'd never made anything on this film. I figured I would die before I ever made back any of my money on it, which is probably still the case. But when I start to see streaming uptick, I know people are watching it. And that's probably why people are going after debunking it, because it's starting to get out there, and more people around the world are finally beginning to understand the incredible details to the story and what has always made it so unique. That's what I think, at least, I think that's all related. I think you can't separate one thing out from another. The fact that more and more people are learning about it is why it's now becoming in the focus of, we got to debunk this.
So tell me more about this lady in Australia. That bothers me.
Yeah, I suspect, although I cannot prove it, but I suspect that there is an effort to have paid disinformants that are paid by some undercover group or an intelligence operation of some sort. We all suspected that Philip Glass was paid by some, intelligence group to kind of go after the Travis Walton case. And what's interesting is I have a lot of the Glass files, because I've been to what's called the American Philosophical Society here, and Philip Glass's letters and communications, were archived there. So I was reading them for years with Stanton Friedman and Kathleen Martin, especially around the Walton case, because I was making this documentary. And all of the things that Glass sort of nitpicked on, they seem to be getting picked up again. So I think that the information from Glass's files are being fed right to these new, younger debunkers who are savvy with things like, social medias and podcast and Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest. And they're putting stuff out there now in these new mediums, whereas these older debunkers, some of them are still around, still alive. There's actually quite a big website with, a whole list of them. Michael Shermer, and I think Robert Schaefer is on there. There's like 25 or 30 real UFO skeptics that want to go out there and just, pick apart these cases. But they nitpick them to such detail that what happens is then the people who are following the case go and dig into those files and say, well, yeah, but you're looking at the wrong data, or you're looking at it from the backside rather than the front side, or you've picked one thing out of 5 things that, yes, you might leave you with some doubt, but if you look at these other 5 aspects of like the polygraphs, you'll see, no, Travis has taken so many polygraphs that the one that he failed is so insignificant because he failed a polygraph right after he came back.
But
from
didn't he?
being abducted.
But didn't he also fail a polygraph on TV with a question asked by Michael Shermer?
Yes, this was called the Moment of Truth show.
Right. Yeah.
And that has been actually taken off the air because their policies were so unethical.
Mm-hmm.
There's a wonderful polygraph institute in New York City called Global Polygraph,
right,
with a PhD, guy, a really great guy named Michael Martin,
mm-hmm.
and he has written in depth, like even before the show was taken off the air.
Right.
He wrote about how their practices were absurd.
But still,
and Travis kind of fell for it.
But still, Michael Shermer asked a question that Travis Walton failed the lie detector with, right?
Well, what Michael Shermer asked, Michael Shermer said, can you give me a piece of a UFO craft? Show me where your evidence is.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Travis doesn't have a piece of the craft,
Right.
No one does. That's the thing Philip Klass always used to say, I'll give you $10,000 if you give me a piece of a UFO. Well, if I think if that was possible, mm-hmm. Travis would have won the $10,000. But Michael Shermer just came on to kind of be like, a presence, and they did that to kind of dramatize everything. But the premise of that show, when you take a polygraph, you're supposed to answer 5, maybe 10 questions, and you're supposed to be run on those questions at least 3 times, and the tracings of those then get compared, and they look at your, skin galvanization and your reactions if your body moves or whatever, and your breathing. Do you know, for that show, they only ever asked a question once, and they asked Travis 60 questions once. They never ran him with multiple questions. The whole premise of it was so poorly done according to polygraph standards that the show got taken off the air. Literally, the Governors Association came after the producers and said, "You can't do this. This is absurd. You're making people distrust, the process of polygraph, and you're terribly bad for our industry." So the Association of Polygraphers went after them and sued them, as well as a number of clients who were on the show.
Well, here in Canada, polygraph is not acceptable in court.
Right, and it's not acceptable anywhere in the States either, except New Mexico. That's the only state where it is. So you know what Travis did after this whole debacle with the show?
No.
He went into New Mexico, got one of the top New Mexican polygraphers that does stuff for court cases, and he ran 2 tests himself, and he passed both of them. So he put that in his book and kind of shows people, look, if you really want to understand polygraph, here's 25 pages you can read about it, and it's in the back part of his book. So
something that
look at it.
Something that I've always wanted to know, Jen, was Travis ever given a PA.She test, psychological stress evaluation test?
I don't know. I know he was examined right after he came back by 2 psychiatrists, and they said to him, "You are not in the condition or the position now. You're in a post-traumatic shock state right now." And I think November 14th or 15th, he actually took a lie detection test or a polygraph with this guy named John McCarthy. And John had a pretty clear bias against Travis. In fact, was yelling at him a couple of times. There's actually an audio cassette tape of this because a number of people had tape recorders going while this polygraph was going on. But the Rosenbaums, a husband and wife psychiatry team, said you should not take this test. The head of the APRO organization, the Aerial Phenomenon Research Group, said to Travis, Jim Lorenzen said, "You're in no position and no place to take this test."
All right, Jen, we've got to take.
You'll fail it. All it will show is that you're under extreme stress, which is what it did show.
Jen, we've got to take our news break. Please stand by. Exonation. Jennifer Stein is our special guest. www.traviswaltonthemovie.com. And this is a website I'd like you to check out later because we're going to be talking to Jennifer about it. TheObservationDK.com. That's TheObservationDK.com. We'll talk more about TheObservationDK.com and the event that it's associated with when we come back from this commercial break. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. Don't go away.
glimpse of your face. I can remember smelling your hair. I'll meet you anywhere, somewhere that no one can retrace, somewhere where no one will know our faces. She has 2 arms to hold me and 4 legs to wrap around me. She's not your typical girlfriend. She's my alien.
And welcome back, everyone. Jennifer Stein is my very special guest this hour. And her website, there's 2 websites right now. Main Line MUFON.com and TravisWaltonTheMovie.com. But this segment, Jennifer, I'd like to talk to you about the Travis Walton International Skyfire Summit that is being held online on November the 6th of this year. Tell us about it.
Well, it's interesting how this developed. You know, ever since we did the 40th anniversary and we launched this film, which we did a conference in Heber, Arizona, where this whole event took place for people in the town to finally come out and get the full story, because it's a small, Mormon community up there. So we started an anniversary screening of the film that I did almost every year, somewhere on the anniversary weekend of this November 5th event. So we've had them on the West Coast, we've had them in the East Coast, we've done some in New York City, we've screened over the last 6 years. This year, some producers in California came to me and said, let's screen the film virtually online and then do a full day event at a virtual platform where people can link in from all over the world. And I said, well, that's really a great idea, because I'm getting emails right now from people all over the world who are saying, Jen, you're in the best position to, speak about this case, talk about the debunking that's going on, pull up the details, put up archive video. So we're doing a full day intensive on some of the forensic details of this case. We've got a filmmakers panel where a bunch of filmmakers like Tracy Torme, who did the Hollywood Fire in the Sky film that they launched in 1993 about this case. That's what made it so popular as well. Not many UFO cases have a Hollywood film made about them like Travis has had.
That's true.
So Tracy Torme will be on with us, and we'll have most all of the logging crew. We're reaching out to them now. We're still waiting for Kenny Peters to get back to us, but we'll probably have comments from everyone, including we'll have Travis there, and he'll do a Q&A at the end of the day. So anyone can log on to this virtual conference and get to connect and ask questions with Travis directly. And it's the outpouring of support and curiosity about Travis's case has been overwhelming. I mean, I'm getting like 500-600 emails a day. I can hardly keep up with them, but it's really going to be very special.
And Exonation, if you'd like to get more information on how you can participate with this event that I'm sure is going to open up a lot of eyes and end a lot of questions, visit www.theobservationdk.com. $10 US is the cost. And if you're a ufologist, if you're a researcher, if you're a believer, or if you're a skeptic, $10, come on, gang. You'll see it all. You'll hear it all. And once again, that's www.theobservationdk.com, and that's for the Travis Walton International Skyfire Summit. Now, Jen, since Travis's event going back all those years, has he been approached by any other extraterrestrials? Has he had an encounter? Has he had any psychic phenomena that would lead one to believe that he is still connected to the ETs in some way?
No. He says it was a one-off kind of a deal. Although I will say Travis has had some sightings, as a number of us have. I think, I've had my own sightings too. That's how I got into this. But he actually was driving home from a conference with I think his son and a couple of people were in the car with him, and they actually witnessed one of those TR3B or black triangle things that was pretty big. I mean, the thing was, he said if you'd opened up a newspaper and held it up above your head, you wouldn't have blocked out this thing.
My gosh.
And they were right on a highway, right in, I think it was Route 5 going north in Los Angeles. Towards, they were heading out of town, heading back to Phoenix from LA, and they saw this thing, and a lot of other people on the highway had to see it too. So he has had some sightings, but he's not had any other contact or abductions. No.
Am I correct in understanding that the connection between the bolt of light that hit Travis that may have somehow injured him, that the reason why the ETs took him up was to take care of him.
Probably that's the conclusion that Travis has finally come to, and we give Travis a good opportunity in our documentary to kind of really discuss that. I think that's what he really has come to believe, that he was probably killed by this, or if not, he was severely injured and might have died from it.
But in the beginning, Jen, that wasn't the case, was it?
Well, Travis didn't quite know how to articulate it, and he was so accused of hoaxing this event because nobody could believe it. But his story hasn't really changed. I think it just took the hindsight of being now like 67 years old and looking back on the whole thing and going, had they killed me, all those boys would have gone to jail or hung, and we would all be dead, right? So it's probably good they picked me up.
Sure.
And he doesn't really remember much from that period of time, but he does remember interacting with two different species on board that craft.
What were those two species? Can you explain them to our audience?
Of course. Sure. And we're going to go into depth in that on our virtual day as well. We're going to show the virtual reenactment we created for the documentary. But basically, he wakes up on a gurney, and he can't see and he can't hear very well, and he's going in and out of consciousness, and he doesn't know how long that is, but he knows he's being cared for, and he thinks he's in a hospital. And he's got this device across his chest, and finally he can start to focus his eyesight on this device that's on his chest, which he said was like a semicircle curvature metal type of structure that was thick, and it had light coming out of it and heat coming out of it. And his shirt was like pushed up. He still had his clothes on. He wasn't naked, but his shirt and his jean jackets were pushed up, and this thing was laying right across his chest. And then he realized finally, once he could focus his eyes on this device, he could focus his eyes a little further, and he saw these gray beings with big eyes and, indistinct features and pale skin looking over him, looking at him like, oh my God, he's coming too.
Yeah.
And so Travis freaked out. He hits them, pushes them back, finds the strength eventually to jump up off this table. He grabs a device and tries to wail it at them and screams at them to get that, heck away from him. And then they don't know what to do. They try to kind of lift their hands up and maybe mentally make a mental block on him or something, or control him. And they can't, because he's probably been electrocuted and he's freaked out and he's screaming at them. So they leave. And they walk out of this room he's in, which is like a small, low-ceilinged, dimly lit, maybe some kind of medical room he's in. And so he follows them out, thinking he's going to try to find his way out of this craft. And he finds his way into what we call the observation room. We've called it that, or the navigation room. He finds his way into a room with a single chair with a bunch of buttons on it. And he goes up to this chair and realizes when he gets close to the chair, there's a proximity sensor in the room when he walks on the floor. And the room becomes a 360-degree like planetarium, floor, wall, ceiling, and it's a star map. And he's freaked out by this, and he starts to push the buttons on this chair in the room. It's kind of like an egg-shaped, maybe, chair for the ETs, I guess, to sit in and control the navigation of the craft, he guesses. And all of a sudden, the star map is changing. So everything is moving around him, and he's like freaked out and nauseous. He can hardly breathe as it is. It's very musty and stuffy in there. And he's got pain in his chest. He's dehydrated. He's weak. He's got heart palpitations going on. And this being appears in the door that he thinks is human. Looks just like you and I. Blonde hair, blue eyes, a little bit of a strange eye, a goldeny blue, large eye. And the person is big, like a little bigger than you and I might be, maybe 7 feet tall, very muscular, blue jumpsuit. He thought it was like an astronaut. He said it looked like somebody from Star Trek, right? That was there to rescue him. So he runs up to him thinking he's human and he can hear him and he can understand him.
Right.
And he starts babbling at this guy, and the guy leads him off this little disc-shaped craft they were on into this big hangar of sorts, this big, like, aircraft hangar of some sort. And Travis looks around, he sees the disc they're walking off of, and then he sees these other discs, which is very interesting because these look like shiny, large eggs. Like we've been hearing the Tic Tacs. Travis was describing a Tic Tac back in 1975, right? 45 years before we met David Fravor, and we know about, the USS Nimitz and what went on in California. It's very interesting.
Well,
Then
Mork
he
and
meets-
Mindy,
yeah.
Mork and Mindy, they also had the egg-shaped craft that Mork came to Earth on. So,
And those look like large eggs. Maybe. I mean, who knows? A lot of those producers, like Gene Roddenberry, they were probably being fed stuff.
by who?
Right. I mean, there's a lot of theories like that.
Sure.
That they were literally being fed stuff so that people wouldn't take it seriously if it did come out.
All right, you and I have to get ready for our final break, Jen. Great talking to you, and congratulations on everything that you're doing.
Thanks.
All right, Exonation Jen Stein is our special guest. And once again, if you'd like to get more information on the online event on November the 6th, it's $10, gang. Come on. Get your wife, get your grandma, get somebody if you can't afford $10. And if you can't afford $10, then you shouldn't be in ufology, because people in ufology, believe it or not, do all their research on their own dime. That's how dedicated they are. Visit www.theobservationdk.com, and the event is Travis Walton International Skyfire Summit. Now, I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news no news this time. Just the break. We'll be back on the other side of the break as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Crystal Beach, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. And welcome back to the X Zone. Before we get back to Jennifer Stein, we came back into this segment with Randy Bachman from Bachman Turner Overdrive with his song, You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet. Now just listen to this, X Zone Nation. There's a lot going on in the world today that is newsworthy. But you know what the Canadian media was reporting on and some of the international media was reporting on? That Randy Bachman's lost guitar was found after 20 years in Japan. Big deal. I don't understand the newsworthiness of that. Here you've got stories of people being abducted by extraterrestrials who are having extraterrestrial encounters, who are having UFO sightings, and everything that goes along that track. And they're not getting the news coverage. But what is? Randy Bachman traced his guitar that was stolen out of a Toronto hotel room. It was found in Japan. Yeah, so what? I don't understand it, Jen, do you?
Well, we all like rock and roll. What can we say?
I know. We all love rock and roll, but with other stories in the news that are more prevalent.
Oh, yeah. We've got so many pressing issues in the world. And, who knows if the UFO phenomenon is the most pressing, but certainly if you really wrap your brain about what's going on, it is the most profound step in consciousness we will begin to make as a human species when we begin to accept the fact that we are not alone in the universe. And that precipice is starting to break wide open.
Jen, let me ask you this. You've been studying UFOs for years. You're a state section director from MUFON. In your opinion, and I'm just asking for your opinion, Jen,
okay.
Do you think that these extraterrestrials pose a threat to humanity?
Not in the least. From what I know, they have been here preserving and protecting the planet. And that's why so many of our spiritual traditions show beings with, glowing orbs over their head and, loving kindness and here to protect us. I think a lot of our religious traditions come from them. But when you talk to the people in the military, which is why and how I ended up getting involved in MUFON, right? You talk to the people who aren't allowed to talk I've never been in the military. I've never been guarding nuclear weaponry, right? But you talk to the people who have, and they say time and time and time again, these ETs are rendering our Minuteman missiles and things inert. In fact, there's a really interesting event coming up. I'll just plug it because people might want to know about it.
Sure.
Next week, Steve Bassett is running an event in Washington, D.C. at the National Press Club, and he's having Michael Salas speak. I'm sorry, is it Michael? It's an author. His name is Salas. I'm Captain Salas.
Right.
I'm blanking on his first name. He was in the military, and he was running guarding a Minuteman missile in out in Minnesota somewhere in the Midwest, a Malmstrom Air Force Base it was, 1967, and UFOs showed up over top of it, shot beams down into it. Well, first they lifted the whole covers off this Minuteman missile. They just picked the covers up, and each cover is the size of about 3 semis. It's thick, it's long, right? They just picked these things up and threw them like they were Tinker Toys. Shot a beam down into this missile, first turned it on like it was going to detonate and go off, right? Then shut it down. And they did this time and time and time and time and time again in Russia and in the United States and in hopefully Korea and in other places around the world where we have nuclear weapons. And they've been underground. They've been under the water with nuclear subs tracing them and hitting them with beams. So what they're really doing is they're saying, whoa, 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 slow down with these toys you're playing with, because you're going to blow up the whole planet and you're going to do damage out there in the greater solar system. And, we don't need you messing up in this perfect, fragile little world you have.
Jen, why do you think Stephen Bassett is doing this again? Because he's done this a couple of times with Salas.
Yes, he has. Yeah. Steve is a great guy, and he's been fabulous in what he's been doing. He's doing an event at the National Press Club, and I believe it is next Wednesday at like 11 o'clock or 11 a.m. I'll see if I can find it in my emails here. And it's about nuclear weapons.
Really, eh?
And Robert Salas is his guest, who will be speaking about the Malmstrom Air Force Base event. So you can go to paradigmresearch.com and learn about that. And it's also something you can connect in via Zoom as well.
But my question is, why do you think he's redoing it again when it's already been done before?
Oh, well, we have such a threat of accidental nuclear detonation in our world that so many people live oblivion to. But there is a huge threat of accidental nuclear explosions.
I see.
And we're putting pressure, I think, on these ET species to help protect our planet. And Steve realizes the significance of that, and it's the way to wake people up. I mean, we need to have congressional hearings on this subject. We haven't had that since 1967. Right? It's like, wake up. The world's got to come together on the most important issues of our day.
Jen, what was your UFO experience?
I saw a craft at 5:30 in the morning that was about 90 feet long and about 6 or 7 feet high. That was a brilliant white undulating square rectangle of light that woke me up outside my bedroom window. And that was 1975, the same year as Travis's event. But I'll tell you, Rob, it stayed in my gray box for 25 years because I didn't think anybody else had the same experience I did. And lo and behold, I realized 25 years later that a friend sleeping on another floor of my house saw the exact same thing I did. We had probably some missing time. We don't think we were abducted, but I think sometimes when you encounter craft that are interdimensional craft like this, it can throw off what we know of as normal time somehow by interdimensional interfaces of some sort. But anyway, when I realized he had the same experience I did, and we never talked about it at the time, that's when I stepped into the UFO field, because I had to begin to unpack this for myself. Either I was going to leave it in my gray box and go about my merry life and never think about it again, or I was going to really unpack it. And when I unpacked it, I realized I'd had this experience, and it was time to give myself permission to read a couple of books and go to a couple of UFO conferences, right? And that's when I got involved in MUFON, and that's when I started making documentary films.
So prior to your first film, had you had any experience in the film industry?
Well, not really. What I'd done is I started making. I had an events coordination business in Philadelphia, and I did weddings, bar
Right.
mitzvahs, corporate events. I did conferences. I was an organizer, and I started to film them with my home video camera in order to promote the next event, and to show clients what I could do. Then nonprofits came to me and said, hey, you did such a great job with that nonprofit event you ran. Could you do some film work for us? Then I got into advertising and film work, and then that led into documentaries, and then that led me to Travis
And the rest
coordinating his conference and doing a film for him.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is history. I'm one of those people that probably shouldn't step into things, and then I do. And I'm such a perfectionist, I drive myself and everybody else around me nuts, but I end up doing usually a good job with stuff.
Yeah.
And then it evolves.
Jen, we've got about 2 minutes left. I'd like to get your comments on the Phoenix Light sighting.
I think it was one of the most significant sightings in history. Over 10,000 people saw this large triangular craft fly right over the city. In fact, over the whole state of Arizona. It started in Flagstaff, it went down to Tucson, turned around and came back. And people still want to say it never happened. But Fife Symington came forward and said, I saw it, even though I debunked it. He was the governor at the time, and he debunked the whole thing at the time. But then later, with James Fox, he came forward and said, oh, yeah, I really saw it.
Wow.
So it was huge. I'm very good friends with Lynn Katai, too, who produced her film, The Phoenix Lights.
Yeah,
She's
Dr.
like
Lynn,
me. She's a doctor who was, ended up making a film because nobody would take it seriously.
Jen, we've got about 1 minute left. What are your final words to the Exo Nation around the world tonight?
I'm going to tell them, don't miss this opportunity. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to go to the observation DK. It stands for DEC, but it's really just DK.com. Sign up for this event. It's a full-day event. We're going to start at probably 11 o'clock East Coast time, but we're going to go till midnight. We're going to have a series of panels of different people, filmmakers, investigators. We're going to go into forensic detail.
Wow.
You're going to learn things you never knew about this UFO case. And the reason we're doing it is because there's been literally an international outcry around the world to my front door and to Travis's and to some of the other people involved in this case to really answer these questions. And that's what exactly we're going to do.
Jen, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Continued success. And Exo Nation, if you'd like to be part of the Travis Walton International Skyfire Summit, $10, people. Come on, go around, collect bottles, bring them to the store, cash in, do whatever you need to do in order so that you can be part of this once-in-a-lifetime or this starting of a lifetime event. www.theobservationdk.com. That's www.theobservationdk.com. And for more information on Jennifer, visit, all right, you got your pencils and paper ready? Okay, here we go. Main Line MUFON.com and TravisWaltonTheMovie.com. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break at 6.5 minutes past the top of the hour as the X-Zone continues with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center and studios in Crystal Beach, Ontario.